There we go. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on, Kylie. It was great. Thank you for we've been chatting for a little bit now, and um, I saw that you really loved a lot of things, all health and fitness related, and that's a big passion of mine. So I'm glad we got to connect and just hop on a call. I always love like to listen in on people's journeys and other podcasts and stuff. So I thought this would be a great way to like kind of share experience, and then whoever listens will find something helpful. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Kylie.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to be here and share a little bit about myself and my experience and answer any kind of leering questions that you might have in regards to health and wellness and be the best service I can be.
Well, I'm really excited to hear your journey because I was reading your post a lot, and you talked a lot about like understanding like how your body works essentially. So I thought maybe like you could kind of share a little bit of your story, what got you into this space, and then your journey so far, lessons you've learned, and anything cool along the way you'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just kind of start from the beginning.
Yeah.
The beginning for me was 2019 when I got my friend's wedding pictures back. I was her maid of honor, and she is showing me all of the pictures. They're beautiful, they look amazing, but I don't recognize myself in them. And
Mhm.
that was when everything for me clicked. I was 198 pounds, and I did not know the girl that was in these pictures.
Mhm.
And I knew I needed to make a change. So I kind of hopped on the whole dieting bandwagon of doing everything I could to lose weight as fast as possible, which is a pretty toxic way to go about things. I was doing the restriction, that minute fasting, telling myself no, punishing myself with cardio, and just shaming myself into complacency, into doing the things that I knew I had to do in order to make the change I thought would make me like myself. And it wasn't until later on, after I lost the 65 pounds, which took me 2 years to do, so in 2021, when I realized that I had lost all the weight, but I hadn't gained any of the happiness I thought I was going to.
Mhm.
It
Oh.
was really shocking, yeah, to see that I could become the version of myself that I thought I needed to be in order to feel good, to be happy, to live the life I wanted to, because that's what everyone promoted on social media.
Hmm.
But I didn't do any of the internal work in the process. I just hated myself and belittled myself into submission. And
Hmm.
that doesn't get you anywhere by the time you get to the finish line. So I started looking at all of these other options in regards to health and wellness because 80 to 90% of chronic dieters, if they continue to diet, they'll gain most, if not all, of their weight back in 1 to 3 years. And I
Wow.
didn't want that to happen. Yeah, isn't that huge?
That's crazy.
I
Yeah.
know. So I was like, okay, I can't keep dieting. This isn't going to keep working for me. It's not sustainable. So what else can I do? And that's when I
Yeah.
found mindful eating moderation, which is what I talk about the most, I think, on my platform. But I also like to talk about fitness and contrast therapy. And I love hiking. I love yoga. So I kind of put it all into my holistic approach, is what I like to say.
I really love that. I like your approach of like thinking of fitness as like something good to do for yourself rather than like a punishment. Because
Mhm.
like I got into fitness well, this was a while ago, but really in like college. And I did it just because I noticed if I sat down all day long, I just got really nervous and a lot of anxiety pent up. Like I need to use the energy some way, you know?
Yeah.
And I think like when you go to the gym and you're happy that you did something that was hard, and then you're like, oh wait, I'm happy that I did it. And you're like have this like self-respect that goes up a little bit each time. And
Mhm.
then yeah, but like if you like miss a rep or you do something you start yelling at yourself, you're like, oh, I'm so unfit and everything. Like you don't really want to finish working out. You're just like, oh, I failed now. I'm not really gonna keep push through whatever.
Mhm.
So I like your approach. Like, what was like the turning point for you? Was it just like you had enough of that type of mentality, or was it like I don't know. What was your switch?
Oh my gosh, I was actually weighing food on my scale, which I did every day, every night. It was absolutely like an automation at this point.
Hmm.
And I was weighing PB Fit, so the powdered peanut butter, because I wasn't allowed to have peanut butter. It had too many calories, too much fat. So I was weighing this out, and it was the night before. So I was in an intermittent fasting schedule, and I couldn't eat anything until the next day, and I'm meal prepping, and I go to lick the spoon after I am done with the peanut butter, mix it into, I think it was like overnight oats at that point was what I was doing, and I couldn't lick the spoon. I started yelling at myself, like, if you do this, like, you're just going to lose control. You're going to go into your cupboard. Like, you're not going to have any self restraint. And I just threw the spoon in my sink and I started crying. And I was like, I can't lick maybe 2 calories worth of peanut butter out of fear that it's going to ruin all of my progress. This is
Wow.
not okay.
Yeah.
And it was like that with everything. I started noticing it coming up in everything I did. It had to be
Mm.
perfect for it to be right.
Wow. So then, did you, that's a pretty hard moment. I mean, um, did you decide from then on you would find a different way? Was that your approach or?
It kind of fell upon me. So,
Okay.
in the midst of the chaos of me just breaking down over a little bit of fake peanut butter, I kind of let go of the idea that I had to be perfect, of this all or nothing mindset, of this dieting mentality for
Mhm.
just a few seconds. And the relief that I found in that moment, where I actually just like asked myself, is this what I want to keep doing for the rest of my life?
Mhm.
Was kind of that moment that flipped the script on there's another option,
Mhm.
and it's mindfulness. I tuned in myself for a
Oh.
moment and I checked in with myself. I assessed what was going on mentally and physically for me and emotionally. And it gave me all of the answers that weren't actually aligned with the habits that I had and the behaviors that I was experiencing or doing and the emotions that were falling into place.
Mm.
And I wanted to understand what that feeling was because I didn't know it was mindfulness at that time. I just knew that there was relief and not focusing on the hard stuff, but focusing on what my body was telling me and what my mind was telling me. And so I started doing a lot of research into what mindfulness was.
Mhm.
And that was like a lot of meditation, a lot of breath work, a lot of like reflective journaling and internal work. But as I started to build that practice, I realized that you could bring that into eating, and it's mindful eating. So I switched into that version of health and wellness.
Wow. That's such a great way to approach it. I'm a huge proponent for journaling and reflection and all those types of things. It's amazing. Who is it? I think Socrates says that um I'm gonna not quote this right, but it's something of the effect of um a life unreflected is not worth living or something like that,
Ooh,
he has it said so well, phrased so well.
yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing how easy it is really to I feel like it's so easy to look at us from an outside perspective of just oh, we can't get it right. We have to do all these things. It's not working. Why can't you get it together? All these other people can do it. Why can't you? And it's
Mm-hmm.
so easy to get stuck in that negative mental space where you're like, oh, I just don't know the way out. But sometimes it's really just looking in and asking
Mm-hmm.
yourself, like you're saying, what is my mind and body actually telling me? Because there's something wrong here. I haven't really fixed the problem, but I know there's something here. So it just kickstarts that journey. But man, so then did you um was it kind of like a slow process or did you start figuring out no, I can relax a little bit and still have fun and still do my fun fitness things and then make it more intense or how'd you get into it more?
It was a very, very slow practice because
Oh,
I
okay.
had to unlearn all of these limiting beliefs that I had instilled in my
Mm,
thought process.
mm-hmm,
I thought that I wasn't capable of being able to eat the foods that I want. I thought I wasn't able to be in control of my habits, that I had to have a meal plan or a guide or restrictions in order to do the things that I needed to do to be compliant. And
Mm,
I had to relearn how to trust myself and build that confidence back in my ability to listen to my body, to know that I knew what was right and what would benefit me most. And
mm,
I'm still actively doing it, if I'm being honest. Like, it has been 3 years of me practicing this, and every single day I see that I'm still learning and growing.
mm,
And it can be really defeating in some moments, but it can also be really empowering because I know
mm,
how far I've come. So I know that this resiliency in me has been built to keep pushing forward and that it's going to be worth it. But turning off that dieting mentality, those that all or nothing mindset where it's just like, if I do one thing wrong, I'm an absolute failure. It's
mm.
so hard to turn that off because I actually talk about this a lot in my coaching. It's called your reticular activating system, or your
Oh yeah.
RAS.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I am obsessed with talking about it because a lot of people actually don't understand how important their brain and the way it's wired and the impacts that it has and how that affects your eating habits. But if you convince yourself of these things, you tell yourself that you can't eat carbs or you're going to gain weight, you're going to think that every time that you look at carbs, you're going to instill these habits that if you grab them, you're going to overindulge because you've been restricting so much, or you're going to feel a lot of shame and resentment. So you literally have to rewire your brain and create new neural pathways and new loops, new feedback loops to promote whatever you're going to do to change. And that takes time.
Mm. Where did you, I'm just curious, when did you learn about the RAS?
That was, I think I actually learned about that in psychology. So I have my master's in
Oh,
social work. So I think I
oh.
learned about that in college first, but I didn't actually apply it to myself until I was doing more research in mindfulness. And I learned about that during COVID in 2022 when I was just holed up in my room. I wish I knew what book I read that from. Was it Automatic or the Atomic Habits? Could it have been that?
Oh, maybe.
Maybe.
I think he talks about it in there. I first learned about it from Ed Milet. Are
Okay.
you familiar with him?
No.
Okay, he's um he's like a business guy, but he has a lot of people on. And he does a lot of stuff on like mindset, and he talked about the RAS, and it was so cool. His way of explaining is like it's when you buy your blue Honda and you see the blue Honda everywhere. You know,
Yep.
it's like that you start familiarizing yourself with all the situations. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can use it to your own advantage. You just bring those thoughts to mind, and then your subconscious and your unconscious mind will start finding those things more and more. Wow, that's so cool that you talked about that because I'm the only person that I've ever talked about it that knew about it. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So that's so cool though. Like it's such a powerful tool.
It is. I mean, it's literally a filter system for your brain. Whatever you think
Yeah.
is important, it's just
Hmm.
going to be like, yeah, okay, this is important. Let's keep feeding this because it doesn't
Yeah.
know any different. It just knows what you're telling it.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then that yeah, it's like well, I think like that's the hardest part with the mind is like sometimes you get caught in those traps where you think you're thinking the right thing.
Mm.
Reality you're not, but you've thought about it so many times you can't think of something different.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like something like shocks you and you're like, oh wait, that's not how it actually works. And then like when you start thinking more deeply, then you're like, oh wait, yeah, I was just a surface level of understanding. I didn't actually look down deep, like what was I actually thinking? Like what are the principles of my thought, like my limiting beliefs that cause all this problem? And so it's so exciting when you do find the problem because you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh wait, I'm not stuck, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Because all of us, we really want these quick fixes. I mean, in today's day and age, like we get everything so fast, we want results just as fast.
Hmm.
And when we focus on that, we don't realize that we're just putting a band-aid on the problem, and
Hmm.
we can get some kind of solution, but it's not a long-term solution. That problem is going to pop up just in a different way next time. So we have to dig deeper and look at the root cause, and we can only do that if we start understanding what's going on in our subconscious and learn how to confront it rather than
Hmm.
dismiss it or fight it.
Yeah. Could I ask you like a couple of like only share what you want to, but like some of your limiting beliefs that you found were like the hardest to break, but the most impactful to break?
Ooh, oh my gosh. So the biggest one, unfortunately, it had to do with my weight. I was always a thicker girl. All of my friends were a lot smaller than me, but a lot of my build was because I was built kind of like a tank. Like they used to call me the wall in softball because people
Oh.
would run into me as a catcher and they would just bounce off of me. Like I was stocky, I was strong. And so I always thought that I was just meant to be the bigger girl.
Mm,
And my limiting belief in regards to my weight loss journey was very much that I was always going to be this size, that it was genetics, that I was not capable of losing the weight, that I was just meant to look like this. I couldn't be one of the skinny girls or
mm,
what I would consider, and I have quotes around this for anyone who's listening, the pretty girls, because I thought that skinny meant pretty. And that was very hard to unlearn, but using pictures, I took a lot of before and after pictures, being able to actually see it rather than just relying on myself to convince me that I
mm.
was losing weight or that I was making a change. That
Yeah.
was super helpful because the limiting beliefs, like you need factual statements, you need something that is tangible that you can be like, hey, this actually proves that you're wrong here. And I'm going to keep showing that to myself until I finally realize that this is what the truth is, not what I think it is.
Wow. I really like that. It's almost like your own, it's like your dream board, but you're the person making it true. That's really cool.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that. Yes. And my own dream board.
Yeah. Oh, it's I really like that actually because it's so easy to forget your progress. You
Mm,
know, like and if you see yourself every day, you don't see any change. But you
mhm,
know, like if you have photo evidence of change, you're like, oh wait, I am making progress. And then you're proving to yourself that what you're doing is the right path. And you're gonna
mhm.
make it there sometime, which then gives you that momentum to keep going.
100%. And what you said about kind of the process, like a lot of us forget to appreciate the process or celebrate that too. We're just
Yeah.
looking for like those big switches, but one plus one equals two. Like it leads up to the big things. The little things need to be appreciated. They need to be shown as much support and love as the big dial movers that we just keep searching for. So
Mm.
celebrating small wins, the psychology of small wins, that's something that I love to talk about too.
I I've something that's something I've wanted to learn more about. I've heard of it like it's really important, but I never really found out why. So if you'd love to share about that, I'm totally down.
Yeah, so the psychology of small wins basically just talks about how celebrating your small wins allows you to build momentum towards bigger wins. So it's kind of just in the name of celebrating small wins, but it gets a little bit more intense because it does look at the brain and how your brain works because your brain likes repeatable habits. You want to
Right.
do the things that are familiar. And when you do the same small thing again and again, and you celebrate that, you show that gratitude, you show yourself support and compassion, you are going to crave doing those things that make you feel good more.
Mm,
And then the more that you do them, the more motivation you're building, the more discipline you're building, the more consistent you're being. And then the more you're going to build resiliency because you're going to be able to show up for yourself in the times that are hard because you've shown that you can do it in the past. And that even if there is a time where you do fall down, you know that you can get back up and you know that you're capable because you have all of these little successes that keep proving that you can do it.
mm. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Because I mean, just on my own experience, I've noticed that it's like you almost feel uncomfortable when you're not doing the same habit over and over again. Like
Mm.
your body almost reacts to it. Um like for instance, I've been doing a little bit of EMDR therapy lately. Are you
Ooh,
familiar with that?
I am. Yes, it
Okay.
is. It's a beast.
Yeah, it's wild. My friend told me about it and he had a PTSD incident. He's a was an EMT,
Mm,
and something came up, and he started like shaking. He couldn't handle himself, and so he found out about EMDR and decided to try it. And he said like it helped him so much. Um, but yeah, like my latest one, like when I finished, I felt like I just was like relaxed. I was like, like,
yeah.
and I noticed like a lot of the habits like where my body wanted to be just kind of went away. And I was
Hmm.
like, it's so interesting because I've been conscious of it for so long, but like that habit of like just being in a certain position, like, shoulder slouching, like hands in the pockets, not looking up straight or things like that. It's all those things that you kind of want to be in, but
Hmm.
like what you're saying, like it makes so much sense. Like if you can see like little victories and like, oh wait, that habit that I have, I know isn't good for me, isn't permanent, but I can make little adjustments. And those little
Hmm.
adjustments are that proof that like eventually I can actually have the success I want.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that you're doing EMDR. That is super, super incredible. Good for you for actually just like tuning into what you need and your overall health and wellness because a lot of people they can see the value in it, but they can't open up and be vulnerable about the fact that they're using this to grow and to support themselves. So I just want to commend you for doing that and for showing up and for sharing it because a lot of people they're going to feel really validated by that.
Thanks. Yeah, I have you done it yet or have you just looked into it?
So I have not done it, but as a social worker in the past, a lot of my therapist friends were certified in doing it and
Oh, okay.
I would hear the experiences that they had with their clients, and I'm going to be honest, it's a little bit too much of a bear for me to confront yet. I'm still working
Sure.
on some things in my own therapy,
Yeah.
but eventually I would like to get there when I feel safe enough, ready.
For sure. Yeah, I totally am with you there. Um it's hard because essentially it's just you're thinking about like the biggest things that have hurt you in your life for an hour or two. And you're
Hmm.
talking with them with a stranger and they're helping you through it. And it's like, this is so terrifying, Like,
Yeah,
how is this even helpful? But then when you actually find out what's really eating you, you're like, oh, it's always um, it's always like that phrase that you repeat. Um, of like for me, it was, like my first one was, uh, I couldn't trust myself.
mm,
So that was like the little small phrase that came up over and over again. And so like I wouldn't go out and do the thing I sh thought I should do, like, go introduce myself to a person, go have a fun day, do something and work or whatever. Like I always kind of hold myself back and like, wait, is this the right decision or not? Because
mm,
that one decision made me question every other decision. But
yeah.
it's like another one of those limiting beliefs where it's like it's stuck and you're not sure how to get through it, but really what the other person is there to do is just ask you, is this true?
Yeah,
And then I feel like, yeah, like maybe you could share your thought on that. Like, do you think that's like what you were kind of were doing with yourself was like, no, this isn't true. Like, this isn't a permanent thing about me. This isn't who I am, essentially,
that's exactly what I was doing. And that's why I actually love reflective journaling so much because it prompts you with those questions and being able to really connect pen to paper for me, having that emotional connection without any of the judgment, without any of the risk or the fear. It was it changed my life because I could get everything out without even thinking about what I should be writing, what was right and wrong. It was just whatever came up. And after I was done, I could read it and I could see what was lurking behind the curtain that I wasn't ready to approach yet. And then I could start taking on that root cause that was under the surface level. So,
Hmm.
absolutely, I completely agree with you.
I was curious, how long or often do you journal?
I try to do it every day. I
Okay.
will say that over the last month being summer, I fell out of my enjoyable habit just a little bit. But when I am doing it regularly, I do try to do it every night. I don't sleep very well. So, having that ability to kind of let go of the tension from the day, set my intentions for tomorrow, kind of understand what went well, what didn't go well, and what I can do differently in the future to support myself better. It helps me go to bed without a cluttered mind because
Mm,
I have a lot of anxiety. So my mind's just like constantly spinning when I'm trying to sleep, and I can't shut it off unless I journal.
mm.
But right now, I'm probably doing it like 4 or 5 times a week. So I'm slacking. I need to be
Well,
better.
that's still pretty good though. I mean, I was just curious because I try to journal every night. I'm off and on. I probably get 4 to 5 days as well, but um, like yeah, I'm with you with the like just kind of like letting everything out and thinking about it too, because it's amazing what the written word can do, you know? Like there's something
Mm,
different about like writing out your thought. Because I think sometimes like if you're thinking about something, it's just like you have an image of it in mind, but you haven't really narrated through the story really. And
hmm.
it's almost like journaling is like your own way of like writing out your life a little bit and like saying what is actually happening. What are the characters involved? What are the circumstances? How do I find the end? You know, am I being
Yeah.
a hero or am I being a villain in this situation? You know, like what's going on here? You know, like
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
great question to ask yourself. Do you usually ask yourself that? Am I being the villain or the hero in my story?
I think unconsciously. Um, have you heard of Alex Hormozy?
Yes. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes.
Do you like him?
I love him. I have one of his
Okay.
books actually.
Okay, yeah. I really like him too. I just love how he's just like so intense and real about everything. I feel like he's yeah. And it's cool too, like he's so close to like our peer age. Like, you
Hmm.
know, he's like 2 classes above us, you know, like in college, you know, he's like the senior, we're the
Yeah.
freshman, we're trying to figure everything out. But I just love he had this one talk. It was like, um, I think it was called 1 hour. If you can't find your purpose, listen to this for an hour. And it was just like
Ooh.
him sitting in a chair and he was just talking about his most frustrating things in life. He was just like, he's like, when I was 19, I realized I'm gonna give up on trying to be happy. He's like, I'm done with it. Like, I can't be happy, so why try?
Mm,
And he was like, I'm just gonna try to prove the people that said I couldn't do something wrong. I don't know if it's gonna get anywhere, but I want to just try. And
mhm,
so he got really emotional in this one, but he talked about this one thing, and he said the difference between the hero and the villain is that they both experience pain in their life, like excruciating pain. The villain shares that pain, and the hero says, I'm going to try to prevent pain like that from ever happening to anybody else.
mm.
And I was like, whoa, that's a really good way to describe it. Um, so I think since then, I've been a little more conscious of like, okay, am I thinking about this as a hero way of like, am I accepting the responsibility of the situation? Can I do something to make it better? Or am
Mhm.
I just complaining about it and making everyone else aware that it's a problem, but not actually providing something to help with it, you know?
Yes, I know that well. I've never heard it said that way, but I like this way that you described it or that how he described it a lot better. But in my social work world, in my past, I was a domestic violence and sexual assault crisis intervention specialist.
Oh.
And that was something that we talked about between the mentality of a victim and a thriver. It's that they sit with what happened and they let it be an excuse as to why things are going to continue to happen in a certain way, which is usually pretty negative, that things aren't going to go right, that they're going to continue to struggle, that they're going to have these hardships. And then there's the thriver mentality where it's like, I'm going to take what happened and I'm going to use it to give back, to give myself purpose, to help other people who are going through the same situation and be an advocate for them to show them that change is possible. They can overcome this. This doesn't have to be their defining moment. And
Wow.
I always thought that was so beautiful, but hearing the
Yeah.
hero and the villain, because I hate the word victim, because I like survivor. It's there's a there's a very big thing about that controversy in the social work world. So the villain and the hero, it just sounds so
Oh,
much more delicate.
yeah. What could I ask you a little bit? Is that like what you're is that what you went to college for then? Like to help people that way?
Yeah,
Or
so I went to
oh,
college originally for teaching, and I realized I was gonna have to follow all of the rules that were being set up by the state in order
uh,
to teach a certain curriculum. So I was like, absolutely not. I don't like being told what to do.
yeah,
So
fair
I went
enough.
over
Yeah.
to social work and I was like, okay, I can kind of like run my own show in counseling. And I did that for 5 years. I loved it. I did foster care, addictions, mental health, the sexual assault and domestic violence. But I burnt out really quickly because I wasn't taking care of myself in my personal life. And I thought the weight loss was what was wrong, but it was really my mental health. It was me not taking care of myself holistically. And so I guess my health journey started way back in like 2013. If we're going with that. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
I did that for a really long time and I loved it.
Wow. So is then like are you primarily like a nutritionist now? Is that like your goal? Or I don't know how to describe because I was trying to like figure out the best way to understand what you're doing because it seems like you have like a pretty broad approach. So I don't know like
Mhm.
the best way to define it, but
Yeah, no, honestly, it's actually a pretty common confusion. So I'm not a nutritionist or a nutritionalist or a dietitian. I am a certified health coach and I focus on food
oh,
relationships. So while
okay.
I understand the macros and I understand how to go into calorie deficit and lose weight, and I am an organic food fiend. I understand living a vegan lifestyle and a vegetarian lifestyle. I've been a vegetarian for over 9 years and I was vegan for two. So I understand like how all of that works with your body, but I like to talk to people about the way that they perceive food and the way that they experience it based on the peer pressures, society, their beliefs about what food can do to them and their fears around it. So a lot of people have trigger foods that kind of they
Mm.
can't go around donuts or else they're going to eat 12 donuts and then they're going to hate themselves and not understand why they're doing it. I help people shift out of that mentality so that they can enjoy the foods that they love.
Wow. That's really cool. Uh that's really neat because I've heard of so many people talk about that. Like I mean, almost everybody I know they talk about like, yeah, I just opened the cupboard and stuff fell into my mouth, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a problem, but what do you have you found like is it mostly mindset problems for those types of people?
It's
Or
actually a little bit of both. So a lot
okay.
of it definitely is mindset, but it's the mindset that perpetuates an action and a fear. So when you are looking at food and you believe that the food is the one in control, that it sits on a pedestal and it's going to determine how you behave, then you're going to start to not trust yourself around that food. And then that often leads for you to restrict that food because maybe a single past experience, or maybe you were told something by like your family. A lot of people have horror stories of their parents telling them that they shouldn't eat that because it's going to make them fat, or put them on a diet when they were really young, or fat shamed them when they were young. So it caused them to restrict a lot of foods. And that piece, that restriction,
Hmm.
that's actually what promotes our overindulgence. Because if you think of being a kid with a cookie jar, when you were younger, your parents were like, no, you can't have any cookies until after dinner. They put the cookie jar on top of the fridge and you were pining for them. You were going to do whatever you needed to climb the counter to get on top of the fridge to have the cookies. We don't like being told no. We want to be in control and do what we think is best. So when we're restricted for a really long time, the moment that that thing becomes accessible, we overdo it because we don't know what it's like to indulge mindfully. We just know that this is bad or that we shouldn't have it.
Whoa.
Mm.
That's really fascinating. Yeah. Whoa. I'm just thinking about so much right now. Like,
Mm.
so is the way like you get them out of it then is like saying it's okay to have those types of things every so often? Is that like the cure?
It
Or
kind of
ish?
is. It definitely goes into it because I do this thing
Oh,
called
okay.
exposure therapy, which is basically you allowing yourself to indulge without judgment and having that food available to you for multiple days in a row so that you can start to normalize it. Because, like, for example, like an apple, it is a sweet and it's filled with sugar, but I bet you don't overindulge in apples the way you do with like Reese's. So
Yeah.
we need to understand how to normalize
Mm,
all food,
hmm
even though they do support us differently, they have different nutritional benefits. If we can
hmm
see them as equal in regards to what we're allowed to have or what we should have, then we're not going to overindulge as much because we're not going to feel like it's in control or that it has to be like a special treat.
Ah. So you kind of take like the novelty out of it essentially.
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
Wow. That's so cool. Wow. Man, so I guess that's just so like you wouldn't think that's the way to overcome those things.
Mm-mm. You're doing exactly what you've been told not to do. But the only way to trust yourself is to test your boundaries, which you've clearly
Oh
been
yeah.
doing with how you were like, I wouldn't go to these places or like talk to these people. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the more comfortable you are with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Same with food.
Wow. That's so cool. What? So, did you kind of like get into that career based on your own experience then? Was that kind of like, oh, I found the way, so now I can help share it with others? Was that kind of like your idea?
Yes, I
Okay.
wanted to show people that there is an alternative way to sustaining weight loss, to having mindful eating tactics that kind of look like a diet without the restriction, without the rules, without
Mhm.
feeling like you have to torment yourself, and without the calorie deficit. I don't think that dieting is sustainable, and there's a lot of research that proves that it's not for a majority of the people. So having this alternative that people can turn to so they realize that all of their progress is not lost if they let go and start leaning into themselves is exactly why I do it because I didn't know and I wish someone would have told me sooner.
Wow. I That reminds me of something else Ed Milet said. He said that your test will become your testimony.
Mm.
S-
Ooh.
Such a powerful phrase. Like, oh my gosh, like I thought about it ever since he said that, like years now. I think I heard it like 3 years ago. But yeah, he said the very problem you're experiencing now is what qualifies you to help someone else in the same problem.
Mhm.
And I was like, whoa. So he said, like, look, he's like, when things get really, really bad, he's like, you're essentially being given so many opportunities to help somebody else in the same position. And I was like, whoa. So I really admire like how you took your own experience and then brought that to others because um I know there's a lot of like um influencers out there that are like
Mm.
do these things, you get these results. But it seems like the ones that actually have the most lasting results for people are the ones that like this was my experience, this is what I did to get through it. Here's the roadmap if you want to come along, you know? And
Mhm.
because then I think there's more nuance in it, you know? It's like yeah, it's almost like if you're doing cold calling in sales, people are like, just go out and cold call. You're like, okay, but if you say like, okay, this is how I do it, you're like, I talk to the person, I ask how they're doing today, you know, yada yada yada, and it
Mhm.
kind of like, okay, this forms you in your mind your process to do it. So like, because you freak out when someone tells you to do something, but you don't know what to do. It's
Yeah.
like you're given a command, but you don't know all the details for the information to actually carry it out.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's why like sharing the experience is so powerful because now you understand like the forks in the road essentially. You're like, okay, this was this thing I had. I didn't know what to do. I chose this route. Wasn't the best idea, but I got on this road. It really helped a lot.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, because I think I'd mentioned it a little bit to you over chat. Um, but I got really like my gut got really wrecked at school. Like the
Yeah.
food was so bad that like I felt terrible. Like after about a year and a half after I graduated, like every weekend I would like have to just like find ways just to like sit down, like not do much. I was just so tired and I was like, what is happening to me? Like never felt that way before. And I
Yeah.
was like, am I just getting old? Is this all it is? I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I was actually freaking out. I was like, how am I gonna make it, you know? Um, so I started looking into things and my sister-in-law is really into a lot of health things. So she was like, she well, she actually I should just show you this book.
Yes.
It's called Nourishing Traditions. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Cute. I have not heard of this.
Okay, it's by Sally Fallon. Um, it's kind of like it talks about like pretty much debunking all of the food myths. So it was like, low cholesterol, yada yada yada. Eggs are bad for you, or things like that. So she's like, this is actually what each food does for your body. This is what they've been telling you. This is what it actually does. And her whole thing is like going back to like ancient cultures, like what kind of foods did they eat? Who are the
Mm,
healthiest people in history? What was their health lifestyle? And so she pretty much compiles it all and tells you how you can pretty much do that for yourself. So huge help. So she started my sister-in-law Becky started helping me with like, okay, like start having kefir each day, um, get a water purifier. So I got a Berkey filter,
mm,
so good. Um, she was like, okay, start doing parasite detoxing, all these different things, just like figure out a way to just like clean out. And my life has been so much better since. Like, so I'm like, okay, so how do I start sharing this with other people? And I'm doing it like with friends and family. I don't really know the right way to approach it on a broad scale, but um yeah, it's like the things that I think really excite me personally is like when you find a way through your own struggle
mhm.
and then you're able to talk about it to someone else and like, oh yeah, I had something similar and this is how I went through it. And then yeah. So um yeah. But thank you for helping other people with your own experience. It's great.
That I people care about people. They don't, while results are great and they want to see the results, they're interested in how you got there, not what the result is, because they want to see if they can replicate it. So when you're
Yeah.
able to provide them with information based on what you actually did, not just like an education booklet or a webinar or a worksheet, they feel like it's more tangible because they're
Mm,
like, this is proof. Like there's proof in the pudding. You are actively showing me that you've done this and that other people have done this. So maybe there's a chance that I can do this too. So I am all about sharing the things that I experienced personally and really being vulnerable about it, because that's how you connect with people. That's how you build rapport. If I didn't share any of this stuff, like no one would want to listen to me, because they'd be like, who do you think you are? Why do you have this knowledge? If I
mm,
didn't tell them that I experienced it and I experienced the hard stuff,
yeah.
then they're going to be like, you don't know what I've been through. And the same goes for you with your friends and family. They can see that you kind of hit a rock bottom area with your gut. You didn't know which way was up, where to turn. You felt lost, but
Yeah.
you were able to conquer that and find out different ways, different avenues that you could take to help yourself heal, and with your family's support. And now you can show other people who are struggling. Like that is such a beautiful thing. I wish more people could do that. Like if our community could just share all of its knowledge, we would
Yeah.
be in such a better place.
That's such a truth. Yeah, like because there's so many lessons I think we all learn, but we don't see them as really applicable.
Mm-hmm.
And even the people that know the best lessons, they'll only share if you ask them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they respect people. They're like, oh, well, I don't want to. I should probably just take care of my own business. And then, like, if you ask, I'll totally help, but I don't want to just put myself there if this isn't the right time or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're totally right about like, yeah, there should be maybe like, I don't know the right way to approach it, but maybe like less of a stigma of sharing your own experience, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like there's a very big stigma around it, and it can be because a lot of people take that as a moment or an opportunity to make it about themselves. So it's really
Ah,
knowing that boundary and that fine line between when I'm talking about me for me and when I'm talking about me for you.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that was something I learned in therapy.
Could you expound a little bit more on that? Like, what's like, I think I know what you're saying, but I'm not really, I think, comprehending it fully. So,
Yeah, so I'm going to explain it as I was for counseling.
okay.
So I was a counselor when I lived in Kentucky, and this is a trigger warning for anyone who is listening, but I am a sexual assault survivor. So a big reason
Oh,
why I wanted to do this and be in the crisis intervention world was because I understood it, not just book wise, but because of my personal experience. And so when I went into counseling, I wasn't telling them what I thought that they should feel like or expecting something from them in regards to their journey back to healing. I was walking that line with them because I experienced the grief and the guilt and the shame and the anger. I experienced everything that they were going through in a different way because everybody's experience is different, but I could truly empathize with what they were going through.
mm,
And you can't explain that empathy unless you explain that you understand why
mm,
you're able to be empathetic with it. And so when I started being a counselor, not a therapist, when I started being a counselor, I was told that you shouldn't share about yourself. And
mm,
I decided to disregard that because when people talk to me about something that resonated with them and that related to what we were talking about, I felt more connected with them. So I started showing up in a way where I would share a little bit about myself and my experience without taking center stage of the conversation, just to
mm,
show like I have an understanding, I can empathize with you, I have personal and professional resources. Let's talk about how we can help you with that. So I didn't make the conversation about me, but I used the things that I knew to help build that conversation for them.
mm. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Because you're essentially saying, I understand you so well, I can share this, my own experience to say, this is a problem and this is how we get through it,
Mhm.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and making them feel like they aren't alone too, because
Mm,
a
yeah.
lot of trauma, whatever it is, it does feel very isolating. And I imagine that
Mm,
you probably, in your experience with your gut health, even felt like, am I the only one that this is happening to? Like, what's going on? Like, it's so scary when we're experiencing something that we don't understand and we're maybe embarrassed to share it or to ask questions or we don't know where to turn for help. So having someone
mm,
kind of right there saying, I get it. I'm not
yeah.
saying that what is going on for you is the same as what's going on for me, but I understand what you're saying. You're not crazy and you're not alone.
Yeah. That's yeah, I've had it multiple times where I'm like, I just don't feel good and I don't know what to do.
Mm,
And other people that don't feel it, they're like, "What's wrong with you? Just get over it." And I'm like,
hmm
I'm trying. I don't know what to do, like, because I found out like a couple of months ago, um, that I have a slight reaction to yeast.
Ooh,
So, like, if I have bread, too much bread, I get like really lethargic and I like start feeling really sleepy and like my mind is really foggy. I'm just starting to lose it. I just like feel like I just need to sit down or something.
wow.
And so I need to look into it more, like how to cleanse it. But um, yeah, like I told other people and they're like, well, it couldn't be that bad. I'm like, I didn't think it would be either. But then I started noticing a pattern and I was like, when I finally got rid of it, like just stopped eating anything with yeast in it, which is kind of hard. There's yeast
Mm,
everywhere. But yeah, like you're just like, oh wait, yeah, this was a problem and it's doing much better now. But I do really appreciate the type of people that are like, well, yeah, I don't have the same experience, but I'm not gonna say you're not experiencing it, you know?
hmm
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I found out I was lactose intolerant from doing the same thing. and
Oh,
I can't eat dairy. And a lot of people, they would always say, well, you can just eat it this one time. And it's like, I could, I'm not going to die, but it doesn't make me feel good at the end of the day. And
yeah.
why are you pushing me to eat something that's not going to make me feel good? It just makes you as a person kind of feel like, am I not important? Like,
Yeah.
do you not care that if I feel good or not? Like that kind of hurts a little bit. So it's super isolating emotionally too.
Hmm. Yeah, it's almost like they want to feel validated in their own like choice. So if someone else joins in with them, like, okay, it was a good call, like that was
Hmm.
the right thing to do. But yeah, like then you have to kind of like, well, but but isn't a true friendship like doing the best for each other? Like all making the right decision. Maybe we make different decisions, but being at peace that we're like, oh yeah, we're all doing what we think is best. Yeah.
For us individually. Yeah, food
Hmm.
peer pressure is such a big thing. And you nailed it. Like people feel more comfortable when the other person that they're with is doing the same thing. It's like that's more valid. And
Yeah.
so if you weren't eating bread, they would be like, is bread bad? Like, do they think that I'm bad for eating bread? And then all of a sudden their head starts spiraling. And
Yeah.
then it becomes this disconnect. And it's like, no, this has nothing to do with you as a person. This has to do with me and how I want to make the next choice for my overall health and well-being, and how you
Hmm.
can make your own choice based on your health and well-being. But it's hard for people to see that because we're always competing with each other and in this comparison trap.
Yeah, the comparison trap. That's a real
Oof.
thing. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh.
It is brutal. We talked about it earlier a little bit, and I was like, oh my God, I could talk about this for hours.
What I heard this was also Ed Mylett. He said that comparison is a thief of happiness.
Hmm.
Because he said like you can be if you find something good and you can be content in it. He said you'll be fine. He's like, there's nothing wrong. But he said as soon as you compare it with somebody else, you're like, oh wait, they probably experiencing a better moment than me. And then that kind of tumbles into a fact of like, oh, I shouldn't be enjoying this then. Like this isn't the best thing, so I should go for the other thing, disregard this. It's almost like maybe a little bit like not rewarding yourself for little things almost. Maybe it's
Yeah,
tied together. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Because I've heard a little bit. I haven't thought about it too much, but yeah.
I kind of think about it a little bit more in like the hardships. I think a lot of people have a hard
Oh.
time saying that life is hard or feeling bad if they're struggling with something because
Mhm.
other people have it worse off. And that
Oh.
has been something that I have a really hard time doing. I am very much like that people pleaser. I want to make everyone else happy. And so for me, like if I have a hard day, I'm like, well, it's nothing compared to the people that I see that are homeless living in the woods
Mm.
across the street from me. Like I can't complain. And so I think a lot of it has to do with that. It's like we compare no matter what. And it really is
Oh.
the thief of joy because we can't allow ourselves to be happy. We can't allow ourselves to be sad. We can't allow ourselves to experience an emotion that's based on our life because we're so worried about everything else, like all the external factors that are surrounding us.
Wow.
And that's no way to live, in my opinion.
No, not at all. That's so miserable. Like, but we do it all the time. What do you, why do you think we think like that? Like, is that just, uh, I don't know, like common society talk, or is it like, because it makes, like, it makes sense on the outside, like, oh yeah, I shouldn't complain because someone else has it worse.
Mhm.
But then if you're saying I shouldn't address the issue, then you're saying that, well, there's nothing wrong really. And
I
it's
think that's
only,
it.
is that it? Okay.
Yeah. No, keep going. Keep going.
Well,
Let your
like,
mind take
yeah,
you.
because maybe that's it. Like, 'cause it's if you say like, okay, it's not that bad, someone else has it worse. You're always gonna find somebody that has it worse. So then you're gonna never almost have the courage to say, no, this is something wrong. I need to fix it. And so you essentially like put yourself on the down escalator of just saying, well, until it gets really, really, really bad, I'm not gonna like try to find to help myself.
Mhm.
So it's almost like you're all like just kind of sloping down to like a worse place because you're like, oh, I don't really want to confront it because that would be quote unquote complaining. When in
Mhm.
reality, I think most times when people think, "Oh, I'm sorry for complaining," it's not really like you're not complaining saying, "Oh, why is this happening? I hate this, whatever." It's really like, I had this rough experience. Like someone tell me something today. I'm not sure what to take of it. I don't want to say they're a bad person for saying it, but I don't know why they said it. I don't know what to do with it. I think we're
Mhm.
trying to find understanding. Like, what are we supposed to use with this?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is not understanding. We always have those what ifs, like, I
Mm,
don't like the fear of the unknown. I don't like that I don't have the knowledge or the understanding or the comprehension of this piece. But I also think a lot of it is like excuses based. We like an excuse to not have to do the thing that puts us in the what if situation where we have to question ourselves or make a change. And
mhm.
if for the other side of it, where you were talking about the comparison trap of like, okay, like they have it so much better than me, or they're doing it the right way compared to how I'm doing it, that like positive side, or like, I guess it's like the upside compared to like the self-criticism side of like looking at how someone has it worse, like you're always making a reason to stay complacent. Like I can't achieve that because
Mm,
I'm not good enough, or I can't complain because I'm not that unfortunate. So it's just like this allows me to be in the middle ground and not have to get better, but not have to do better to like change something that would help me grow. Like there, it just,
yeah.
you end up staying settled.
Wow. That's an amazing perspective. Like, I never thought of it that way, but it's so true. Like, yeah, you're essentially abdicating your own responsibility for your life because you're like saying, "Oh, I don't have it that bad," or "I don't have it that good." So why am I even thinking about it right now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you
I
just kind
can't
of
change
let,
it.
yeah, yeah, and you're just like, "Ugh, whatever,"
Yeah.
and then you just start doing the same old things over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that because that's a powerful thought. Like, thinking someone else is worse, I'm okay, things aren't that bad, but making it as an excuse to not actually look and see what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think our intuition is a lot more attuned than we realize.
Yes. Yes.
And it's telling us a lot of things, but I think we train ourselves to not listen to it because we're like, oh, maybe it's just a lack of faith, really, of just like thinking things could get better. Oh,
We don't trust ourselves. And I think
yeah.
we are taught to not trust ourselves. Because, like,
Mm,
if
yeah.
you get hurt when you're a kid, a lot of parents will say, oh, you're fine, just shake it off. So you can't have those emotions. You go to school and you're hungry, but you're not allowed to eat until lunch. So you stop caring about what time you're actually hungry. You have
Mm,
to go home and maybe you're not allowed to go out with your friends until you clean up your room, so you realize that relationships aren't important and cleaning is what matters. It's like we don't know where to go because so many different pieces of our society are telling us what's right and wrong, how we feel, how we're supposed to function. So our intuition gets lost.
mm. That's what you just said there about cleaning is more important than relationships. That's totally what's being understood there. Like,
Mm,
um, because I've always had the mentality of like, okay, I got to get everything else done, then I can play.
yeah.
So it's always like play is an afterthought of like, like just I think that started young, but like even today, I'm like, well, I could have time to go see somebody, but like, well, they probably wouldn't. They're probably busy too, but I could do other stuff, and so you kind of make an excuse, but yeah, that's so true. Like, because I have a couple of nephews and a niece, and so over there pretty often. And I'm trying my best to like be a good influence as an uncle because I'm like, okay, I had these rough things as a kid, and I'm like trying to like make sure that like they aren't like ignored. So if they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to say something and share something, I want to be there and like say, yeah, that's a really fun thing to share and talk about because it's for them, that's their world. So
Yeah.
you don't want to destroy their world to them because it's not your world. Their world isn't your world.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different world. So it's like, well, you can't just discount someone else's experience or their own joy for something because you don't have that right now.
Hmm.
But I think that's exactly what you were saying with like kids growing up. It's like, well, you're trying to make the kid fit the parents' lifestyle. And so anything outside of the parents' lifestyle, the kid's gonna feel like, oh, that's a bad thing to do.
Hmm.
Not necessarily, like maybe the kid having fun and maybe roughhousing a little bit is a better thing than the parent worrying about getting everyone to their different events for the day. Like maybe that little moment's more important, really. But that gets squashed by the parents saying, oh no, we got to run to soccer practice, we got to make dinner, whatever. And
Yeah.
so logistics becomes the most important thing.
Hmm. And it's so hard because you don't usually know what like monumental moment is going to be that monumental moment. And being a parent, like you're just trying to figure it out. You have no
Yeah.
idea what you're doing. So it's like you're throwing
No.
spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks and trying your best. And
Yeah.
so ends up when we become adults, we're like trying to unlearn some behavior that we were taught, and we want to blame someone and make excuses as to why it's not our fault or why we don't have to change because this is just what happened or this is just my reality. Like it's not me.
Yeah.
And then it comes back into the complacency.
It really
The full
does.
circle.
Yep. Oh, there's so many of those like full circles that just like, oh, we're back at the same problem again. Like, what do you think, like, if you thought of, okay, like the one thing you think if we could figure out and understand, like, see actually what's happening, that kind of like seems like that causes a lot of the symptoms of like, I don't know, comparison, limiting beliefs, self-doubt, all these other things. Do you think it's like the lack of trust in ourselves? Do you think it's something else? Like, because I think we're all trying to figure out like what's that one thing? If I just did that one thing, it'll kind of just start setting everything else right, and I can start fixing those things more.
Mm.
I don't know. I've thought about it a lot, and I've tried to figure out if it's just self-doubt. Um, I don't know if I have an answer yet. I just was curious what your thought is because I feel like you're around it a lot more, just in your profession and people you know. So
I think it's probably different for every person, but
okay.
I also think that it can be different generationally. And
Mm,
right now, I think it's social media. I think that a lot of what we see is not real, but we think that that is the reality of every single person, but we don't know what's like happening behind the scenes. So we're
mm,
always comparing ourselves to this idea of perfect, what life is supposed to be like, what relationships are supposed to be like, what
yeah.
work is supposed to be like how much money I'm supposed to have, the car I'm supposed to drive. We lose our own identity. And
Mm,
I don't think I would have known how much I was stuck in comparison and this external perfection if I hadn't done a social detox, which I did for 3 months in 2022. That was my New Year's resolution. I was just stopped with social media. And it was the best thing I ever did for myself because I learned what I liked. I learned more about myself and what I was feeling, what I was experiencing, how to set up coping mechanisms that weren't me glued to the phone, distracting myself. I really honed in on my mindful eating because I was able to be present and in the moment. Like social media just, it drowns out so much of what's going on inside.
mm, wow. Do you think that's like, do you think that comes from like an insecurity people have that they only want to show their highlights?
An insecurity, yeah, but also I think that they're trying to prove something
Mm,
to other people. So like that probably does extend from the insecurity, but it's like we are always in a competitive state and we want to prove our worth and show that we matter because we don't really feel like our value is like inherent, that our self-worth is just here because we're alive. We think that it comes from proving something, that we are doing
Mm,
something, we offer something. And so I think it's like a lot of that. I have to show my value here.
wow. That's wow. That's so true. Like, because we all want to feel valuable.
Hmm.
We all want to feel loved. Like, it's, man, I feel like a lot of these deep thoughts, I'm like, oh, wait, I feel like I think about this a lot, but I don't know what the right words are to describe it, you know? Like,
Yeah,
um, but I think that is really on point that a lot of people just really want, yeah, like they matter.
the validation, I think, is what a
Yeah,
lot of it is. Like, I watch like Fourth of July fireworks. No one's watching fireworks anymore. They're taking pictures of the fireworks to post,
I
to get
know.
likes.
Yeah.
And it's, I have to show that I am like doing something, that I'm cool, that I offer something, that I can promote myself, that I can feel good. And
Mm.
if I don't get any likes, then I'm going to delete it. Like, you see those pictures like may delete later. It's because they're
Oh,
so worried that someone's not going to like it and that it's not going to get enough views. And then they're just like, well, clearly this didn't matter. And then they delete it. Like,
oh,
it's just so based on what other people think about you nowadays. And I hate that.
yeah. It robs you of so much. I don't know, like it robs you of your life, really, because
Mm-hmm.
there's so much that there's a lot of really cool things a lot of people do, you know? It's like my I have a good friend and he was just showing me today like some of his cool like mountain biking stunts. And I
Oh,
was like,
cool.
that's awesome. Like I want to do that. Like this is
Yeah.
great. But yeah, like I didn't know he did that until he rode his bike today to work and he was like, "Oh yeah, like I was pretty into this in high school and just would putz around and like do jumps like right around town and just try to see what I could do." I was like, "This is so cool." I never knew, you know, like
Yeah.
and but that was him on his own like, you know, his own gumption of like, "Yeah, let's just go out and have fun and try something new."
Mm-hmm.
And that makes you like the person even more because when they find like the things they really are interested in, and then you're just like, oh yeah, this person is like really blossoming almost. It's like they find their soil of like, this is my thing, and I just love doing it. And they get really good at it, and then they're just like, yeah, this is just so much fun. It's like your friends that know how to sing and do music. You're just like, yeah, they're in the element. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
cool to watch.
You watch them light up. Like, you can truly
Yeah.
see the passion in the action. And it is
Uh-huh.
such a beautiful thing.
It really is. Yeah.
It's what I saw in the Olympics for sure.
What are like your top Olympic sports?
Gymnastics.
Oh
I
yeah.
am such a gymnastics fiend.
Who are like your favorites for this Olympics?
Simone Biles.
Okay, yeah, yeah, she's pretty
I'm such
awesome.
a basic. I'm so basic.
Well, is this her third, fourth?
Fourth or fifth, I think. I know one of them, she stepped back. She stepped out because she had some personal health issues going on and she didn't attend. So
Oh,
it's either the fourth or fifth, I think.
that's a long time for a gymnast.
Yeah,
That's
she's one
really,
of the older gymnasts that were there.
wow, that's amazing.
I know.
Wow, that's great. Gymnastics and swimming were like my top two,
Yeah.
for a long time. And then I really enjoyed watching, well, like I guess like the old school stuff, you know, like race and track. Some of
Hmm.
those things are fun to watch. I did like watching like volleyball. I don't know. I just was like Olympic level volleyball. You're like, wow, the sport actually works. You know, like I guess when you're playing with your friends, you're like every other shot we drop the ball, but
Yeah.
when you see it go
But they
back the
keep it
next so many
going.
times, it's like, oh, it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's actually insane when you're watching people who are good at sports.
I know. You're like, hey, it actually works. It's a good game. But yeah,
Just for a little bit.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I don't want to. We've been talking for a little while. I don't want to keep you too long because I know, um, yeah, it's always great to chat more. But this was wonderful, Kylie. I really appreciate you coming on tonight. I think we talked about a lot of really important things and things that aren't normally shared, I think, in the online world. You know, like cyberspace is kind of quiet with a lot of these important things. And
Mhm.
um, I'm always grateful to be able to just chat with people. And I love, I like podcasting really for me is like the coolest thing because you just get to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, like I was telling my friend the other day, I was like, like podcasting is the greatest excuse to just talk to somebody. Because you're like, hey, would you just want to talk about things? And then it just so happens that we're recording it, and it just so happens that other people can listen in, and then they can share from it, and then things are better, you know? So um,
Yeah.
it was a real
It's
privilege.
It was so much fun. No, I love being able to just get to know someone without any like, there's no strings attached. We're just connecting, vibing, seeing where the conversation flows. And those are the best kinds of conversations, especially because whoever is listening, they're going to find some value somewhere because of how many topics we went
Yeah,
into.
I think we had like 20 different things. So
Probably, if we should
yeah,
count.
we should. Yeah, I'll try to make like a chapter list or something. So,
Too funny. I love it.
oh,
No, but thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute pleasure, and I am so honored to have been able to
yeah.
be a part of it.
Yeah, well, if you'd be down, I'd love to like talk to you more about these things in the future because I have a lot of questions for you about like what you think about like dieting and nutrition and just health and fitness too because I've been trying to do a deep dive and I just love hearing people's take on it more and I think I got so interested in a lot of other things. I was like, wait, I kind of forgot that part. So maybe at a future time we could talk more about other deep dive topics, your thoughts on things. So
Yeah, we'll do a part two.
yeah. Well,
I
thank you,
love it.
Kylie.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom. I hope you have a great evening.
You too.